The Galactic Concord had kept peace among 1,000 star systems for 12,000 years. They did this through one simple rule that nobody was allowed to break. All problems must be solved with words. All fights must end at the talking table. Wars were not allowed. If two species had a problem, it would send their best speakers to sit down and find an answer that made everyone happy enough to go home. It was clean. It was safe. It was the way things had always been done. So when the Vethkai Dominion came from the dark edges of the galaxy and took the human colony world called New Eden, the Concord did what it always did. They called for a meeting. They sent messages. They prepared their best diplomats to find a peaceful solution. The Vethkai were not like other species. They came from the Outer Rim, where the Concord's rules meant nothing. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black as empty space, and they smiled with too many teeth. They had built their empire by taking what they wanted, and now they wanted something from the humans. 40,000 people lived on New Eden, farmers, teachers, children, families who had traveled across the stars too. Build new lives on a green and beautiful world. In one terrible night, the Vethkai ships came down from the sky and took them all. Every single person became a prisoner. The Vethkai leader, cruel commander named Lord Sithrak, sent a simple message to the galaxy. Give us what we want, or these humans will never see their homes again. Ambassador Lyris Vaughn was the Concord's greatest diplomat. She had solved problems between species that had hated each other for centuries. Her scales changed color with her emotions, shifting from blue to green to gold as she spoke. She had never failed to find peace. She traveled to Earth expecting the humans to be grateful. She expected them to be scared and desperate for her help. She expected them to beg her to save their people. What she found was something very different. The meeting room was simple and clean. No gold decorations. No fancy displays of power. Just a long table made of dark wood and chairs that looked comfortable but not expensive. The humans did not try to impress her with wealth. This made her nervous, though she did not know why. Admiral Kira Tanaka sat across from her. The admiral was a woman of middle years with gray streaks in her black hair and calm, steady eyes. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or ribbons. When she looked at Lyris, the ambassador felt like she was being studied by something patient and very old. Other humans sat around the table. Military leaders, government officials, scientists, they all had that same quiet look in their eyes. Like they were waiting for something. Lyris cleared her throat and began her presentation. She showed them maps of the Helix Corridor, 3 star systems that the Vethkai wanted. Rich in minerals. Good locations for military bases. Valuable territory. The Vethkai have made their demands clear, Lyris explained, keeping her voice professional and calm. They want the Helix Corridor. 3 star systems. In exchange, your people will be released unharmed. This is a reasonable starting point for negotiations. Admiral Tanaka did not move. Her face showed nothing. And if we refuse? Lyris blinked. The question surprised her. Then you negotiate harder. You offer something else. Perhaps mining rights instead of full ownership. Perhaps a trade agreement. Perhaps shared access. That is how this works, Admiral. That is how it has always worked. For you, the Admiral said quietly, I do not understand. Admiral Tanaka leaned forward. The movement was small, but everyone in the room seemed to lean with her. The air itself felt heavier. Ambassador, how long has the Concord existed? 12,000 years, Lyris answered proudly. 12,000 years of peace. And in that time, has anyone ever simply taken your people? Held them hostage? Told you to give up your worlds, or watch your families die? Lyris opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. Her scales flickered with confusion. She searched her memory, all her training, all her history. No, she admitted. That would be unthinkable. It is not unthinkable to us, Admiral Tanaka said. Her voice was soft, but it filled the room. Humans remember a different history. We remember times when the strong took from the weak. We remember when raiders came to our villages and stole our children. We remember what it means to fight, not for territory or resources, but for the people we love. She reached into her uniform and pulled out a small chip. It was black and simple, no bigger than a fingernail. She slid it across the table toward the ambassador. "What is this?" Lyris asked. "A message for the Vethkai, and a warning for your Concord." The ambassador's scales had gone pale gray, a color that meant fear. "What kind of warning?" Admiral Tanaka stood up. The other humans stood with her, moving together like they shared one mind. "Ambassador, humanity has a different tradition. One your Concord has never seen. We do not negotiate with those who take our families." Her eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire. "We hunt them, and we do it with honor hunt." Lyris repeated the word like she had never heard it before. "I do not understand. What is a hunt?" "Play the chip. Share it with your Concord. Share it with the Vethkai." Admiral Tanaka moved toward the door, then stopped. She looked back at the ambassador with something that might have been pity. "An ambassador? Tell Lord Sithrak something for me." "What?" "Tell him that the hunt has been called. Tell him that 12 hunters have been chosen. Tell him that they are coming and they will not stop until our people are home." She paused. "Tell him he has 30 days to release the hostages. After that, there will be no more warnings. There will only be the hunt." The humans left the room in silence. Lyris sat alone for a long time, staring at the chip in her hand. Her scales shifted through colors she had no names for: fear, confusion, and something else. Something that felt almost like excitement. She played the chip. What she saw changed everything she thought. She knew about the young species called humanity. The images showed 12 ordinary people, not soldiers in armor, not warriors with weapons. A farmer with rough hands, a teacher with kind eyes, a doctor with gray hair, an engineer with oil stains on her fingers. They stood in a circle around a fire. Their faces were painted with old symbols that Lyris did not recognize. They spoke words in a language that was not meant for translation. And in their eyes burned something that made the ambassador's blood run cold. These were not diplomats. These were not soldiers. These were predators. And they had just been set loose upon the galaxy. Lyris Vaughn sent the message to the Concord that night. She sent it to the Vethkai the next morning. And across the stars, species that had never paid attention to the small planet called Earth suddenly found themselves unable to look away. Something old had awakened, something the galaxy had never seen before, and it was hungry for. Just as the news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Humanity had refused to negotiate. Humanity had refused the Concord's help. Humanity was doing something that nobody understood. They were calling it a hunt. Species that had ignored the humans for decades suddenly wanted to know everything about them. Who were these strange creatures from the small blue planet? What did they mean by hunt? And why did the word make even the oldest species in the galaxy feel something strange in their hearts? On Earth, the answer was already taking shape. The United Terran Council met in an ancient building made of stone and wood. It had stood for over 1,000 years, rebuilt many times, but never abandoned. The humans liked to keep old things. They believed the past had lessons to teach. Council leader Marcus Webb stood before the assembly. He was a tall man with dark skin and white hair, and he carried himself with the calm strength of someone who had seen many troubles and survived them all. "The Hunter's Covenant has been invoked," he announced. His voice was quiet, but every person in the room heard him clearly. "For the first time since humanity reached the stars, we call upon the old ways." The Hunter's Covenant was older than space travel. It was older than computers. It was older than written history. In the ancient days when humans lived in small groups and the world was full of danger, they had developed a tradition. When a member of the group was taken, when the young or the weak were stolen away, the hunters would gather. They would track the enemy. They would bring their people home. It was not war. War was fought between armies, between nations, between peoples. The hunt was something else. The hunt was personal. The hunt was a promise. 12 hunters would be chosen. Not because 12 was a military number, but because it was the old number. 12 hunters could move quietly. 12 hunters could think as one. 12 hunters were enough to track any prey across any distance. The trials began the next day. Thousands of humans volunteered. Soldiers and farmers, scientists and artists, old and young, rich and poor. They came from every nation on Earth and every colony among the stars. They all wanted the same thing. They wanted to bring their people home, but the trials were not what anyone expected. The judges did not look for the strongest fighters. They did not look for the best shots. They did not look for soldiers with medals and ribbons. They looked for something else. A young woman named Sarah Chen had been a teacher on New Eden before she escaped during the first hours of the attack. She had led 40 children through the burning streets to a hidden shelter. She had kept them calm. She had kept them alive. She had done this without weapons, without training, without anything except her courage and her love for the children in her care. She passed the first trial. An old man named Yusuf Okonkwo had been a farmer all his life. He had never left Earth until the trials. But when the judges asked him why he wanted to hunt, he gave them an answer they never forgot. "I grow food," he said simply. "I plant seeds and watch them become something that feeds families." Those people on New Eden planted seeds too. They planted hope. They planted futures. Someone came and tried to burn it all down. His eyes were gentle but absolutely certain. "I will not let the fire win." He passed the first trial. One by one, the hunters were chosen. A doctor who had spent 30 years healing the sick, an engineer who built bridges between cities and between peoples, a pilot who flew rescue missions into storms, a scientist who studied the stars with wonder and respect. Each of them was ordinary in the way that humans understood ordinary. Each of them carried something extraordinary inside. Commander Daisuke Mori was chosen to lead them. Daisuke was 60 years old. He had spent most of his life studying alien species, learning their languages, understanding their ways of thinking. He had retired to a quiet house by the sea, where he grew vegetables and wrote poetry. He had never commanded soldiers. He had never fought in any battle. When the reporters asked why he had been chosen, Admiral Tanaka answered for him. "Commander Mori understands something that warriors often forget," she said. "He understands that the goal is not to destroy the enemy. The goal is to bring our people home. He will not be distracted by anger. He will not be tempted by revenge. He will do what must be done, and nothing more." Daisuke himself gave a different answer when the cameras found him. "They took children from their beds," he said quietly. "In my grandfather's time, in my great-grandmother's time, we had a word for those who prey on the innocent. We called them monsters." He looked directly into the camera, and millions of humans felt like he was speaking to each of them personally. Monsters are meant to be hunted. The Vethkai watched the broadcasts with amusement. Their spies sent back reports that made Lord Sithrak laugh until his forearms ached. 12, he said to his commanders. They sent 12. Against my fleets? Against my armies? Against the dominion that has conquered 100 worlds? He laughed again. These humans are not just weak. They are stupid. His commanders laughed with him. They did not see the danger. They did not understand what was coming, but others understood. The Cathari were among the oldest species in the galaxy. They had existed before the Concord. They had watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. Their elders remembered things that others had forgotten. In a temple floating in the empty space between stars, the eldest Cathari gathered to watch the human broadcasts. Their bodies were made of light and crystal, and they moved slowly, as if time meant nothing to them. They are not preparing for war, the eldest said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Look at their eyes. Look at how they move. Look at the symbols they paint on their skin. What is it? A younger Cathari asked. The eldest was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made the younger ones tremble. They are preparing for a reckoning. Something we have not seen in 10,000 years. Something I thought no species remembered anymore. What should we do? The eldest turned to face the young one. Her crystalline eyes seemed to hold all the sorrow and wisdom of the ages. Watch, she said. Watch and remember. The galaxy is about to learn something it has forgotten. and humanity is about to teach a lesson that will never be forgotten. On Earth, the 12 hunters gathered for the final ceremony. They stood in a circle around a fire, just as their ancestors had stood thousands of years ago. They painted symbols on their faces and arms. They spoke old words that had been passed down through generations. And then, Commander Daisuke. Mori did something that the entire galaxy would remember. He looked up at the stars and spoke directly to Lord Sithrak. Knowing that every spy and every censor was watching, "We are coming," he said. His voice was calm and quiet, but it carried across the void like thunder. "You have 30 cycles to release our people. After that, we hunt." He paused. And in that pause, every human watching felt their heart beat faster. "And Lord Sithrak, you need to understand something very important. We do not stop. We do not get tired. We do not give up. You can run to the edge of the galaxy, and we will follow. You can hide in the darkest hole you can find, and we will find you. You can surround yourself with all your armies, and we will reach you anyway." He smiled. And it was not a kind smile. "The hunt has begun." Lord Sithrak sat on his throne of black metal and watched the human broadcast with a smile on his gray face. 12 hunters. 12 soft, weak creatures coming to challenge the dominion that had conquered 100 worlds. It was almost too funny to believe. "Double the guards around the hostages," he ordered lazily, "and send a message to the humans. Tell them that for every day they make me wait, I will kill 100 prisoners." Its commanders rushed to obey. The message was sent across the galaxy. It's broadcast on every channel so that all species could see the power of the Vethkai. Dominion. The humans did not respond. Days passed. Then weeks. The Vethkai sensors watched for approaching ships. Their spies searched for signs of the human hunters. They found nothing. No fleets. No soldiers. No attacks. It was like the 12 hunters had vanished into empty space. Lord Sithrak began to relax. Perhaps the humans had realized their mistake. Perhaps they were negotiating in secret, too embarrassed to admit defeat publicly. Perhaps their so-called hunt was nothing more than words. He was wrong. The hunters had not vanished. They had simply learned something that most species in the galaxy had forgotten. The most dangerous predator is not the one you can see. It is the one you never notice until it is too late. They moved through Vethkai space like shadows. Their small ship was designed to look like a merchant vessel, one of thousands that traveled between planets every day. Nobody looked twice at them. Nobody wondered where they were going. They were invisible because they looked so ordinary. Commander Daisuke Mori had studied the Vethkai for years. He knew their language. He knew their customs. He knew their weaknesses. Most importantly, he knew their leader. Lord Sithrak is not truly powerful, he explained to his hunters as they traveled deeper into enemy territory. He rules through fear. His commanders follow him because they are afraid of what he will do to them if they disobey. His people obey because they have no choice. "How does that help us?" asked Sarah Chen, the teacher. "Sphere is like a building made of sticks," Daisuke answered. "It looks strong, but it only takes one flame to bring it down. We do not need to destroy his fleets. We do not need to fight his armies. We need to show his people that he is not as powerful as they think." The first strike came without warning. Lord Sithrak kept his personal communications on a secure network. Only his most trusted commanders could access it. He believed it was impossible to break into. He was wrong about that too. YUSUFO Conquo, Udode farmer, had spent his youth working with computers before he turned to growing food. His hands were rough from decades of work in the soil, but his mind was still sharp. He broke into Sithrak's network in 3 days. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Lord. Sithrak was not just cruel to his enemies. He was cruel to everyone. He stole from his own commanders. He murdered rivals who threatened his power. He kept secret files on everyone, filled with blackmail and lies. He trusted no one, and no one had any reason to trust him. The hunters did not keep this information secret. They shared it. Every commander in the Dominion woke up one morning to find their private files exposed. Every shameful secret. Every hidden crime. Every promise Sithrak had made and broken. The information spread faster than any fleet could travel. Commanders, who had been allies for years, suddenly looked at each other with suspicion. If Sithrak had lied about this, what else had he lied about? If he had betrayed these people, would he betray them too? The first cracks appeared in the Dominion's unity, but the hunters were not finished. Lord Sithrak kept his personal wealth hidden on a moon far from any important planet. He thought no one knew about it. He thought it was safe. The hunters found it. They did not steal the wealth. That would have been too simple. Instead, they sent the location to Sithrak's rivals. Within days, his secret fortune had been divided among a dozen different commanders, each one claiming they deserved it more than the others. Sithrak raged and threatened, but the damage was done. His commanders had tasted his wealth. They had seen how much he had been keeping for himself while they fought and died for his empire. The second crack appeared. Still, the hunters continued. Lord Sithrak slept in the most secure room on the most protected ship in the Dominion fleet. Armed guards stood at every door. Sensors covered every inch of space around him. Nothing could reach him without being detected and destroyed. Commander, Desukmori reached him anyway. He did not come to kill. That would have been too quick. That would have been too easy. Instead, he came to leave a message. When Lord Sithrak woke from his sleep, he found something on his pillow. A small wooden carving of an animal he did not recognize. It had 4 legs and sharp teeth and eyes that seemed to glow even though they were just painted wood. Next to the carving was a note written in the human language. Sithrak called for his translators. When they told him what the note said, his gray face went pale. 3 words. We see you. No alarms had sounded. No sensors had detected anything. The guards had seen nothing. And yet a human had walked into the most secure room in the Dominion and left a message on his pillow, for the first time since he had taken power. Lord Sithrak felt fear. He surrounded himself with more guards. He changed ships every night. He trusted no one, not even his most loyal commanders. He could not sleep without checking under his bed and inside his closets. The galaxy watched and understood. The hunters were not trying to defeat the Vethkai military. They were not fighting a war. They were doing something far more devastating. They were hunting one man's soul, Ambassador. Lyris Vaughn sent reports to the Concord every day. Her scales had stopped changing color. They had settled into a shade of pale yellow that meant confusion and wonder. They are not attacking military targets, she wrote. They are not killing anyone. They are simply exposing the truth about Lord Sithrak. They are showing his people who he really is, and his empire is falling apart because of it. The Concord did not know how to respond. This was not war. This was not diplomacy. This was something they had no name for. But the Cathari had a name for it. It is the hunt, the eldest said when she heard the reports. The prey does not die from teeth or claws. The prey dies from exhaustion and fear. The hunters simply follow, patient and unstoppable, until the prey can no longer run. Lord Sithrak made his final mistake on the 28th day, desperate to show strength. Desperate to prove he was still in control, he sent a message to the galaxy. A threat. A promise. Enough games, he snarled into the camera. His eyes were wild. His hands were shaking. I will give the humans one final choice. Surrender your hunters to me within 40 hours, or I will execute every single hostage. Every man. Every woman. Every child. Their blood will be on your hands. He thought this would force the humans to give up. He thought they would never sacrifice 40,000 lives for the sake of 12 hunters. He was wrong one final time because the hunters had known this moment would come. They had planned for it from the very beginning. And while Lord Sithrak had been chasing shadows and sleeping with guards at his door, they had been doing something far more important. They had been finding the hostages, and they had been setting them free. The galaxy held its breath. Lord Sithrak had made his threat. 40 hours. 40,000 lives. The humans had to choose between their hunters and their hostages. It seemed like an impossible decision. On every planet and every station, people watched and waited. Some believed the humans would give up. Others thought they would try to attack. A desperate final battle that would end in tragedy. Nobody knew what would happen. Nobody expected what actually happened. Lord Sithrock sent his soldiers to the holding facility 12 hours before the deadline. He wanted to prepare the executions. He wanted cameras in place. He wanted the galaxy to see what happened when someone challenged the Vethkai. Dominion. His soldiers marched through the corridors with their weapons ready. They opened the doors to the main holding area, expecting to find 40,000 frightened humans waiting for death. They found nothing. The room was empty. Not a single person remained. The beds were made. The floors were clean. It was as if no one had ever been there at all. The soldiers searched everywhere. They checked every room, every closet, every hidden space. They found nothing but silence and shadows. One soldier discovered a note stuck to the wall of the main chamber. Just a piece of paper with words written in simple black ink. They were already home. Lord Sithrak received the news on his flagship. For a long moment, he simply stared at the screen, unable to believe what he was seeing. 40,000 people had vanished from the most secure prison in the Dominion. It was impossible. It was unthinkable, and yet it had happened. Across the outer rim, small ships emerged from hiding places. Merchant vessels, cargo ships, mining transports, ordinary ships that nobody had looked at twice. Each one carried rescued hostages, groups of 10 or 20 or 50 people, who had been secretly moved over the past 4 weeks. The hunters had not been chasing Lord Sithrak for revenge. They had been using the chase as a distraction. Every time they exposed his secrets, every time they left messages in his bedroom, every time they made him look weak, they were keeping his attention focused on the wrong thing, while Lord Sithrak watched the shadows for hunters. The hunters were rescuing the people he had forgotten about. Sarah Chen, the teacher who had saved 40 children during the first attack, had organized the escape routes. She had moved through the prison disguised as a cleaning worker, talking to the hostages, calming their fears, giving them hope. She had drawn maps in the dust and whispered plans in the dark. Yusuf Okonkwo, the old farmer with clever fingers, had disabled the security systems one by one. He had made them look like accidents, small failures that the Vethkai engineers blamed on old equipment. By the time anyone noticed a pattern, half the hostages were already gone. The doctor had treated the sick and injured, making sure everyone was strong enough to travel. The engineer had modified the escape ships to carry more people than they were designed for. The pilot had flown mission after mission through enemy space, always finding paths that the Vethkai patrols never watched. Each hunter had used their skills not for destruction, but for salvation. Commander Daisuke Mori sent his final message as the last rescue ship jumped to safety. The message was broadcast on every channel in the Dominion. It's impossible to block or ignore. He stood alone in a small room, still wearing the simple clothes he had worn throughout the hunt. There were no weapons in his hands. There was no anger in his eyes. He looked like a grandfather about to tell a story to his grandchildren. "Lord Sithrak," he said quietly, "you called us primitive. You called us weak. You thought our traditions were nothing but foolish words and empty ceremonies." He smiled, but there was no joy in it. "You forgot what humanity learned in our darkest ages." He paused, letting the silence stretch across the stars. "True hunters do not seek trophies. They protect their pack. Every person you took is free. Every family is whole. Your empire still stands, but your honor is ash." Lord Sithrak watched the broadcast from his private chamber. His gray face was twisted with rage. His 4 hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that the metal bent. "Find them," he screamed at his commanders. "Find them and destroy them." But his commanders did not move. They had been watching too. They had seen how icily the humans had moved through their security. They had seen their leader's secrets exposed, his wealth stolen, his power revealed as nothing but smoke and mirrors. They had seen a man who ruled through fear reduced to screaming in an empty room. "The hunt is complete," Commander Mori continued on the broadcast. "We came for our people, and we are leaving with our people. We did not destroy your ships. We did not burn your cities. We did not kill your soldiers." His eyes seemed to look directly at Lord Sithrak, even though that was impossible. But know this. We remember faces. We remember names. And should you ever threaten our people again, we will return. Not with armies. Not with fleets. With patience. And Lord Sithrak, patience is the one thing humans have mastered above all others. He leaned forward slightly. You can rebuild your wealth. You can find new allies. You can surround yourself with new guards. But you will never sleep peacefully again. Because every shadow, every unexpected sound, every moment of silence will make you wonder. Are they here? Are they watching? Has the hunt begun again? He straightened up. That is the price of taking our families. Not death. Something worse. The knowledge that you are prey. Today, tomorrow, forever. You are prey. The broadcast ended. Lord Sithrak sat in silence for a long time. Then he began to issue orders. Find the hunters. Destroy them. Punish anyone who had helped them. But it was too late. His commanders had already begun to talk among themselves. The humans had walked through the Dominion like it was nothing. They had rescued 40,000 people without firing a single shot. They had reduced the most powerful man in the Outer Rim to a paranoid shadow of himself, and they had done it with 12 people. What would happen if they came back with more? Within 3 days, Lord Sithrak's most trusted general turned against him. The general broadcast his own message, announcing that he was taking control of the Dominion to restore stability and honor. Other commanders quickly joined him. Lord Sithrak tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. His own guards opened the doors for the general's soldiers. His own pilots refused to fly his escape ship. In the end, he was dragged from his throne by the same people who had bowed to him just days before, the Vethkai. Dominion did not fall because of human weapons. It did not fall because of human armies. It fell because one tyrant's weakness had been exposed, and his people had finally seen him for what he truly was. The hunters watched from a safe distance as the Dominion tore itself apart. They did not celebrate. They did not cheer. They simply nodded and began the long journey home. They had done what they came to do. They had brought their people home, and they had done it with honor. When the rescue ships arrived on Earth, millions of people gathered to welcome them. Families were reunited. Children ran into the arms of parents they had thought they would never see again. Old friends held each other and wept with joy. The 12 hunters did not attend the celebrations. They slipped away quietly, returning to their ordinary lives. The farmer went back to his fields. The teacher returned to her classroom. The doctor picked up her instruments again. They did not want medals or statues. They did not want their names in history books. They had only wanted one thing, and they had gotten it. Their families were home. The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord had not been this full in centuries. Representatives from 100 species had traveled from across the galaxy to attend this meeting. Their ships filled the space around the Concord station. Like a cloud of metal and light, they had all come for the same reason. They wanted to understand what humanity had done. Ambassador Lyris. Bond stood at the center of the speaking floor. Her scales shifted nervously through shades of blue and gray. She had prepared her speech carefully. Choosing every word to express what the Concord felt, the human delegation sat quietly on the other side of the chamber. Admiral Kira Tanaka was there, still wearing her simple uniform. The members of the United Terran Council sat beside her. And in the middle of them, still looking like a grandfather rather than a commander, sat Daisuke Mori. What you did, Ambassador Lyris began, her voice echoing through the silent hall, violated every principle of the Galactic Concord. There was no formal declaration. There was no negotiated settlement. There was no treaty. She paused, looking at the humans with eyes that held more confusion than anger. For 12,000 years, we have maintained peace through one simple rule. All problems are solved with words. All conflicts end at the negotiating table. You ignored this rule completely. You took action without permission. You entered foreign space without approval. You destabilized an empire. Admiral Tanaka began to rise, ready to respond, but Commander Daisuke Mori touched her arm gently. She looked at him, then sat back down with a small nod. The old commander stood slowly and walked to the speaking floor. He moved like a man with no hurry, no anger, no need to prove anything. He simply walked, and somehow the entire hall fell even more silent. "Ambassador," he said, and his voice was soft but clear. "With great respect, I must correct something you said." Lyris tilted her head. "What correction?" "You said that our action violated every principle of the Concord. But the Concord's principles are meant to protect the innocent. They are meant to prevent suffering. They are meant to ensure that strength does not simply crush weakness." He turned to look at the assembled species. 40,000 of our people were taken from their homes. Children were stolen from their beds. Families were torn apart. Your Concord knew about this. What did you do? The silence was uncomfortable. Many representatives looked away. You called for negotiations, Daiso continued. You sent diplomats. You discussed and debated and considered options. And while you talked, our people sat in cells, not knowing if they would live or die. That is how disputes are resolved, Lyris said, but her voice was uncertain now. No, Daesuk said gently. That is how disputes between equals are resolved. But there was no dispute here. There was theft. There was kidnapping. There was evil. You cannot negotiate with someone who holds your children and demands payment for their return. You can only pay, or you can take them back. He walked a few steps closer to the ambassador. We offered the Vethkai every chance to release our people peacefully. We told them we were coming. We gave them 30 days to make the right choice. They chose pride and cruelty instead. Still broke our rules, Lyris said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Yes, Desuk agreed. We did, and we would do it again, because some things are more important than rules. Some things are more important than keeping the peace. What things? Dasuk smiled. It was a warm, sad smile that made him look very old and very wise. Family, he said simply. Our people were taken. We brought them home. That is all that mattered. That is all that will ever matter. A murmur ran through the hall. Some species nodded. Others looked troubled. But everyone was listening. You call what we did a violation? Dazuk continued. I call it a promise kept. Humans made a promise to each other long ago, when we were still young and afraid in a dangerous world. We promised that we would never abandon each other. We promised that if someone was taken, we would find them. We promised that no matter how far, no matter how dangerous, we would bring our people home. He looked around the hall one more time. That promise is older than your Concord. It is older than writing. It is older than cities. It lives in our blood and our bones. You cannot negotiate it away. You cannot make it illegal. It simply is. The hall was completely silent now. Then slowly, the Kethari elder rose from her seat. The Kethari rarely spoke in Concord meetings. They were ancient beings who preferred to watch and remember rather than act. When one of them spoke, everyone listened. The elder floated down to the speaking floor. Her body was made of light and crystal, and she seemed to glow with inner warmth. When she spoke, her voice sounded like music and wind and the gentle movement of stars. We have watched humanity since they took their first steps beyond their world, she said. We wondered what they would become. Would they be conquerors, crushing all in their path? Would they be merchants, caring only for profit? Would they be scholars, seeking knowledge above all else? She turned to face the assembly. Now we know. They are none of these things. They are guardians. The word echoed through the hall. Vethkai took their people. Humanity took them back. The Vethkai threatened death. Humanity answered with rescue. The Vethkai showed cruelty. Humanity showed patience. She paused, letting the words settle. And here's the truth that every species in this hall should understand. Humanity did not kill anyone. They did not destroy any ships. They did not burn any cities. They fought an empire and won without taking a single life. She turned to look directly at Ambassador Lyris. Is that not what the Concord truly wants? Peace without bloodshed? Victory without destruction? Justice without revenge? Lyris opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her scales had settled into a deep, thoughtful blue. Perhaps the elder continued, it is not humanity who should learn from the Concord. Perhaps it is the Concord who should remember what humanity has never forgotten. What is that? Lyris asked quietly. The elder smiled. It was the first time anyone had seen a Cathari smile. That civilization is not the absence of strength. It is strength governed by principle. The humans did not hunt for blood. They hunted for justice. And when justice was served, they went home. She turned back to the assembly. I have lived for 10,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall like waves on a beach. I have watched species destroy themselves through war and greed and fear, but I have never seen what I saw these past weeks. Her voice grew stronger. I saw ordinary people do extraordinary things. I saw farmers and teachers and doctors walk into the heart of an enemy empire and take back what was stolen. I saw them do it without hatred, without cruelty, without losing themselves to the darkness. She looked at Commander Daesuk Mori with something like respect. That is not a violation of our principles. That is the fulfillment of our highest hopes. That is what we should all aspire to be. The hall erupted in conversation. Species that had condemned humanity an hour ago now spoke in confused, uncertain tones. Species that had feared humanity now looked at them with new eyes. Ambassador Lyris stood silent for a long moment. Then she walked across the speaking floor to stand in front of Commander Mori. I do not fully understand what you did, she said honestly, but I think I understand why. And I think the elder is right. Perhaps we have something to learn from you. Dasque bowed slightly. And perhaps we can learn from each other. We do not want to be your enemies, Ambassador. We want to be your friends. But friendship requires respect. And respect requires understanding that some things we will never compromise. Your families. Yes, our families. Our people. Our pack, he smiled. That is the one thing you can always count on from humans. We will never abandon our own. Never. In the weeks that followed, humanity's place in the galaxy shifted. They were no longer seen as the young species, the newcomers still learning the rules. They were something different. Something the galaxy had not seen in a very long time. They were protectors, guardians, hunters, who only hunted to bring their people home and across the stars. A new saying spread among those who had watched the great hunt. Humans do not negotiate. They hunt, but if you have done no wrong, you have nothing to fear. For they do not hunt for blood. They hunt for justice, and they will walk through fire to bring their people home. Years later, children of 100 species would ask their parents about the humans. What are they like? The children would ask, and the parents would tell them the story of 12 ordinary people who walked into the heart of an empire and brought 40,000 souls home without spilling a single drop of blood.